It looks like people are starting to trickle in here, so we'll probably give it another minute or so before we jump in. We've got quite a bit to cover today, so hopefully we can stay on track.
Yep, we're going to jump right into this one and just get smoking started here in a minute. We do have a lot of slides. In fact, you know what? Let's just go. Let's just do it. People can replay it if they missed it. Yeah, this part. Yeah, this early part is. Hey, there's Meg. Hey, Meg, we're going to kick you back into attendee land. There you go. All right.
Awesome. I'll kick it off then. Hopefully you're in the right spot. This is the 2020 Suck webinar that you registered for. My name is Mark Huber. I'm a director of growth at Metadata.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jason Widup, VP of Marketing here at Metadata.
Let's get right into it. So what we will be covering, and I think most of you this is what you came for. So which demand gen tactics we saw worked as well as didn't work in 2020 so that you know what you should be doing more of and less of in the new year. Some of our own demand gen bets for 2021 that we plan to make at Metadata, and we hope you will as well. The third thing being findings from a recent survey that Jason and I ran, focused on demand marketers and what you all are prioritizing in the new year. And then finally, an open Q&A from everybody at the end. Feel free to submit questions throughout this in the Q&A. We'll make note of those and try and get to as many as we can. What we won't be covering. So I think this is a little bit different in a sense that we are not going to be pushing our product onto you. I hate those webinars.
Wait,
and
I don't get to pitch?
I only like to attend things that I would actually go to myself. So if I wouldn't want to attend that, then I don't want to do that sort of marketing. The second thing being demand generation versus ABM. We're not here to argue one versus the other. The reality is you should be doing both at the same time, and we'll explain more why later. And then third, for those that follow Jason and I or anyone from Metadata on LinkedIn, how we got the Hoff, Bob Saget, Lindsay Lohan, and Lance Bass with the help of a few cameos to promote our webinar. We got some really great feedback about those. It was a one-time deal. We're going to retire them. And whether it was on LinkedIn or the occasional hot take on Twitter that we saw, I think most of the people did like them. And then speaking of the Hoff, if you haven't seen this yet, this has absolutely nothing to do with the webinar, but the Hoff at one point in his cameo said, "See it, believe it, and you will live it." And that's coming from a guy that couldn't be less qualified to talk about really anything that comes to follow on these next slides. Awesome. All right, so what happened this year? What a year. I mean, we're December 8th. It feels like Tiger King was honestly 2+ years ago. That was only in March. It's moved some of these months as slow as possible, some a little bit faster than others, but there was a whole lot of bad this year, some good. And if you're like me, hopefully you laughed at some point to try and get you through some of this craziness. But hopefully we will never see another year like this again.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I love how our designer put this slide together. Yeah, this is mostly there's a couple good in here, I guess, you know, the baby Yoda, or the child, I guess, is technically speaking. The murder Hornets were, of course, just, you know, I don't know, 30 miles north of where I live in Washington in the Pacific Northwest. I didn't see one, but, you know, and I don't know if any of y'all saw, I did my own take on the ocean spray meme. You may not have seen it because I think about 5 days after I posted it, LinkedIn took it down because of copyright violation. So I got my hands slapped a little bit, but yeah, definitely an interesting year. Don't want to see it again.
What is going on? There we go. This jumped ahead a little bit. There we go. So let's get serious for a sec. What you actually came here to learn more about. So the B2B marketing angle of this, you know, what were some of the bad things that we saw this year? For me, I would say marketers that are only focusing on channels where it's really easy to prove the ROI. Those can be misleading. Just because you can measure them doesn't necessarily mean that you can always attribute the right behaviors and activities to those. And paid search is one of those channels that really first comes to mind for me. Another one, this kills me. any email that I get, whether it's cold outreach from a salesperson or from a marketing person like me, but any email that mentions these trying times or tough times, guys, let's be more creative. There's so much more that you can do. Use a better hook. And I hold myself accountable to that. So you will never get any email from Metadata that mentions any of those words. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, and on that first one too, the channels that are easy to measure, I think, one of the things that we're talking about here is, what's really the impact of all of these other things that you're doing? What's the impact of that relationship that you're building with somebody, or what's the impact of the content that you're producing that people are reading, but that isn't really meant to, to get an email address, or as meant to be a lead in. And so, I'm happy that marketers are starting to embrace some of these other channels, and kind of not ignoring the fact that you have to be able to prove your ROI, but not getting so hooked. Like, I think you put it well, is like just kind of migrating to the ones that are easy to measure, because those are the ones you can put money into and show the outcome. The other ones, though, that are maybe a little bit more nebulous, those are probably going to work better and actually have more of a long-term impact. But sometimes people are scared to get there. But I mean, the third one down here, the forms, like the form fields, right? So requiring 6+ fields, to download a piece of content, or honestly, any fields. Like, so especially if it's, helpful content that is, or if it's about definitely, especially if it's about your own product, don't gate it. But yeah, let's stop gating content, because, I think the truth is, just give it freely. And if you did a good enough job with the content and continue to do a good enough job, it can't just be like one piece of content, but you continue to do a good enough job, and you'll be in that consideration set when it's time. You don't have to have that proof through that email address that you won. And so the next one down, getting pitch slapped on LinkedIn. I think I first heard that term coined by, I think it was Steve Watt. I don't know. Steve, if it was you, great, thank you. If it was someone else, sorry, I didn't get it right. I think it's great. It is very telling of what it is. And so, at the beginning of this year, I think I literally said oh man, my LinkedIn messages box is like the only place I don't have a lot of spam. And fast forward literally 2 or 3 months from there, and it was almost completely untrue. It was like, oh boy, here we go. I've got to wade through this just like my email now. And, I think the bad in that are the people who try, but not very hard, to disguise their connection request as like a genuine relationship thing. And then they even might wait a few days, but then they're really just looking to sell to you. And so I think that's the one where I was like, oh, I don't know about that.
I mean, I've now gotten to a point where if I get a LinkedIn connection request and I can clearly tell that it's a salesperson, it's almost a matter of I'd say hours between the time to accept it and the time you get a pitch. So we're all about showing value and demonstrating value first before you even warrant having a conversation like that with a prospect. So slow and steady. But that's not to say that everything that has gone on this year on LinkedIn has been a bad thing. I think one of the real big positives this year is marketers, the select few that are spending more and more time consistently publishing good content on LinkedIn. I spend, it's probably a ridiculous amount of time of my day on LinkedIn, and a lot of that is for learning from people like me, in addition to just learning what my target audience is interested in. So there's a whole lot that you can do from just consuming that content, and more importantly, starting to start up good conversations with people in your field. The second piece, so this is awesome. You'll hear us talk about this more and more throughout the presentation. The marketers that are really reporting out on business metrics, opportunities, pipeline, and revenue. If you're still holding your hat on leads, you got to find a new hat to hang your hat on. You really need to tie yourself to revenue metrics, and the best marketers have been doing that, I would probably say, for at least a year, if not longer, but more and more marketers are catching up with that too.
Yeah, and it's good to see, because I do feel like it's a little bit like the last one, where there are certain metrics that are easy to measure. We can measure these things, they're pretty easy. So let's focus on those, but they're definitely usually not the right metrics. So I'm happy to see that one in there. Also using paid social to distribute your content. So I think when you really hit that sweet spot where you've got your audience that is really highly definable and targetable, you got the right social channel, be it LinkedIn or Facebook or Reddit or whatever, the right ad, the right offer, there's really not a better medium to really get at your target buyer in B2B. Now, I know I don't forget about paid search and their role in B2B. There's a big role, but when you really want to deliver that right message to the right person, there's really no beating social. And so, I think a lot more companies kind of caught on to that and are starting to use social to distribute their content. And then also, ideally, not putting it behind a gate. And then finally on the slide, showing empathy in your marketing. And so, really getting down to that authenticity, and not putting that mask on. And so potential buyers want to know that there are real people, real caring people who are really doing the best that they can behind the product that you're marketing. Nobody, if everything looks perfect and like nothing is going wrong and like everything is going super well, there's literally nothing that could, slow us down. That is actually what causes me as a potential buyer to like put my warning flags up. And so I think as marketers realize that, it's like, hey, we need to, it's almost like just general social media in general, like FOMO and all this thing, people posting just their best life. It's like, well, as marketers, let's not do that. Let's post our best life, but then also let's post some of the shit that's going on too. And let's be real and authentic with our potential buyers, because I think they'll appreciate that from us. All right, so let's get into some meat now. And so the first part here of our webinar, we're going to look at the actual campaign data from 2020 in LinkedIn and Facebook that we derived from our own platform to help better understand what marketers are doing this year. And so just a couple of data points here. We're looking at data from January 1st through about the end of November from our Metadata.io platform. There's about almost $18 million of ad spend that we analyzed, and this is across LinkedIn and Facebook. This was from 28,000 analyzed campaign experiments, which generated 2.1 million clicks and 134,000 leads. Now, one other point before we move to the next slide is keep in mind what we're going to show are straight up averages. And so if you think about it, we've got customers that run the gamut. We got software customers, we got manufacturing customers, we have services customers. And so the data is great directionally, but just remember, it might not hold exactly true for your industry. If you have questions after this, I'm just going to open it up and welcome. Just come to us with questions if you have a specific question that may need like a one layer deeper from this analysis. All right, let's jump in. So the first one we're going to hit on is what's the right CTA to use? What's the best CTAs to use? We're going to start with LinkedIn, and then the next slide will be Facebook. So that's how we'll kind of carry through these. And I need to make sure my timing is good. So I'm going to fly through these because we don't have a lot of time. But again, we're going to give this data out to everybody that joined. So CTAs on LinkedIn, we've got learn more, download, sign up, register. I think there were some other ones in the past, but these are the primary ones. And so a couple insights here. What gets used the most? Learn more and download. Of course, that makes sense. Register and sign up to a much less extent. A couple takeaways on this slide. If you optimize ads to only engagement, so you can see learn more in that bottom left chart, high engagement, click-through rate, but are intending to generate demand, you'll pay a lot more. So you can see learn more in that middle bottom chart is the highest CPL. And so just, one of the takeaways here. Also, we noticed register as a CTA is one of the least used, but carries the lowest CPL. So things like webinars, virtual events, things that you actually have to register for, that CPL actually we saw is very low. So if you want to maybe do more events like that. Cool, I'll leave it there. There's a lot more data here. Those were some of the, sorry, one more point on here. The ranges of data that you're going to see in this. So we have everything from literally a 57-cent per lead campaign all the way up to one that's $1,175 per lead. Again, different customers. Our click-through rates range from literally a low of 0.1% all the way up to over 2.5%. And then the cost per clicks range, squinting, 29 cents all the way up to $82. So you can see there's huge ranges in here. And again, it's because our customers, we have one customer who has literally 10 accounts that they can sell to in the world. And so they're willing to pay thousands of dollars for a lead because that fits in their demand model. So with the caveats away, we'll move on to the next slide on Facebook. Cool. So on Facebook, we've got slightly different CTAs. The different one is Facebook has apply now, whereas LinkedIn has register. They're different, different uses. And on here, what we see is the CTAs most used by our customers actually aligns well with the lowest cost. So we see that the learn more, download are the most used, and also they come with the highest click-through rate and some of the lowest CPLs. The most efficient being learn more here in Facebook, as it has the highest click-through rate and cost per leads on par with the lowest one, which was download at about $96. And then of course, apply now has specialized use cases. So you're thinking like maybe job applicants or memberships or, something like that. All right, let's move to the next slide. Now we took a look at what are the optimal character lengths to use in your ads. And so what we're looking at here, the top two charts are just what were the most used character lengths, and you just have the range there, 120 to 130 characters. And then the bottom are the performance. And so you can see, and these are just the top 10. So right, we've got a huge list of these, so I can only show the top 10. The tendency, as you can see, is to write longer. So you can see we've got 120 to 130 characters, basically 110 to 160 characters compromise the top five. But the shorter lengths generally come with better performance. So if you just spot check this, these 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 50 to 60 are all getting some of the higher click through. And, they're sprinkled in here as well in some of the lowest CPCs. And then finally on the CPLs, you can see, again, some of these text lengths are lower. I know I'm flying through this and I apologize. We just have a lot of data that we want to get to. But again, we promise we will send this out with explanations and things like that to help you chew through it a little bit more. Again, finally on this slide, one more thing on that slide, 140 to 150 characters seems to be the sweet spot for brand awareness campaigns. But what's interesting is it's not in the top 10 lowest CPC. So just a couple of takeaways there that could help you in your next campaigns. And the final one is looking at the same data on Facebook. And so what we can see on Facebook here is a little bit of the inverse. The longer text lengths generally get higher click-through compared to LinkedIn on this, but what we actually see is our customers are actually using sub 100 characters quite a bit. And so, some learnings that we have that we can, just forward on to our customers and to you guys.
And one other thing to add real quick, we've looked into this and we intentionally tried to have it ready for this webinar, but we still haven't written it off just yet. We were looking at readability of ad copy and specifically the grade in which the writing is best fit for, and seeing how well that plays into click-through rate metrics, conversion rate metrics, and anything else that follows. So more to come on that front too.
Cool. All right. The next thing that we did is we took a look at the words used in ad text copy for the top 10% of ads and the bottom 10% of ads, both on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. A couple of notes. Some of the bigger words you see here are going to be related to the fact that of what our customers are selling. So the things like cloud, probably management, things like that. That said, you can pull out some words in here that are more generic that might actually help you in terms of writing your next ad copy. So things like automation, very popular, visibility, consistency, enterprise, explore, deliver, and 101 even were found in the top 10% of ads on LinkedIn. And then conversely, on the bottom 10%, on the next slide, we see words like team. Now, this word can sometimes diffuse responsibility from the person seeing the ad onto others from their team. So maybe that's why. Courses, words like test, engaging, learn, companies, platform, thrive, boost, age. Hyperconverged I saw a couple times, but I felt like that probably was more used by one of our customers and not several of them as part of their platform. But hyperconverged showed up quite a bit as well. And then on Facebook, what we see is difference. And so on Facebook, what we've got in terms of the top, we still see some similarities. So automation is still up there. But now we're looking at things like content, guide, learn, togetherness. I thought that was interesting on Facebook, win, and enterprise there again. And then conversely, on the bottom 10%, we're looking at things like sales, customer, communications, learn, data, experience, and remotely. And so again, this isn't an exact science. We're just looking at, taking a bunch of common words out like and, the, et cetera, and just, trying to basically make some sense of all of the words that people are using in their ad text. We also took a look at the images that were used in some of the highest performing ads that we had on the platform this year. And so a caveat to this is not rank order. We had some higher than this, some lower. What's interesting is we changed the way that we store images about halfway through this year. So I didn't actually have access to some of the images from earlier this year. But what do we see as some common points here, some things to call out? So several actually have a CTA in the image itself. And so we tend to see these have higher click-through in general. So you can see, I think 3 of the 6, actually one of the ads is ours there in the bottom middle. The second point is several of these actually mention other companies who may be more well-known than the advertising company. So you see Integris has a Tableau logo. Gorgeous there on the bottom right has talks about Shopify. It has a Shopify logo. And then Vonage in the upper left, they mention WhatsApp in there. They're personalized. The Intersect group adding the target company's name. So that's in the middle top there. So they're literally targeting people at Christus Health. And so they're able to get high click-through rates on that. And then also talking about hiring during the pandemic, the upper right ad. So pretty clear why that would get high click-through. The next one is similar on Facebook. What we see here are 4 of the 6 include images of real people. On the bottom left, you can actually see Mobilize.io had a video case study actually with high click-through. We didn't actually see many videos with as high of click-through as these, or as that video. Coley actually in the upper left uses a CVS subtly in their image, which is a well-known brand. And so that could also help pop. And then Vonage's interesting use of color in the bottom middle there would stand out in a feed. All right, now we're going to look at these based on the lowest CPL now. So now which images are best at getting leads at a low CPL? So here what we see, 4 of the 6 actually contain an image of a book. So wait, we're one slide ahead. Mark, go back one, please.
There you
Thank you. So 4 of these 6 actually contain an image of a book. So what people are actually going to get. So they know exactly what they're getting. So I think that's very interesting. 2 of them contain images of people in them. They're very clear though, each one of these about what you're going to get. You know that you'll be exchanging information for something. Webinar, you're gonna have to register. A book, hopefully more in the future will not gate them, but at this point in our journey, you probably expect to, give up your email address or fill out a form for it. And then the final one, we're looking at lowest CPL images on Facebook. Facebook can take a little bit different sizes. So we're looking at some of these here. Can you go one more down, Mark? Thank you. Some of these lowest CPL images on Facebook, we've got people in the images. We got 2 of these that are actually from Zoom and are a guide for how to use Zoom. And so they came in, pretty quickly, pretty hot as well. One of them is a webinar and you attended in exchange for a $50 Amazon gift card. And so that was a pretty high performing one from a cost per lead standpoint as well. So again, we'll send all these out. Maybe you can get some creative inspiration, things like that. And yeah, happy to share these after the webinar.
We did get a question that we can touch on towards the end of this during the Q&A, but I think it's something that a lot of people are likely interested in, looking at Facebook and LinkedIn and comparing CPLs and lead qualities across. So we'll save that one for later, but great question.
Yeah.
So a few things to call out. If you take away none of what Jason and I have talked about so far today, please take away this. So there are 2 features that we've been using heavily in our own campaigns, and we've been recommending that our customers use as well. The first being LinkedIn lead gen forms. So for LinkedIn lead gen forms, think of them as an additional call to action to your sponsored content campaigns that you're running. With the exception of now it includes like an in-app form that is pre-populated based on the information that they have associated with their LinkedIn profile. So when you talk about eliminating barriers and removing friction from that process, you're making it easy as possible on your audience to just click a call to action, have their information pre-filled, and let them download or receive whatever information they're looking for. It also plays very nicely with our tech stack. So we use Salesforce and HubSpot. And if you're using any sort of triggered workflow to fill in additional data gaps for routing purposes, for scoring, whatever it may be. You can use those as triggers in HubSpot workflows. So it plays really nice with marketing automation. The second thing, so we'll watch a video here in a sec, LinkedIn conversation ads. We saw a whole lot of success internally at Metadata with conversation ads this year. For those that are not familiar with LinkedIn conversation ads, think of them as a sponsored InMail meets a drift playbook. So it's a set of a handful of questions with different answers that you can then route them down, almost like a decision tree. And it's one of those things that it was a new tactic this year. And I think we saw a whole lot of success because we were one of the first companies or really marketers to jump on those. So it was a new channel that people had not really seen before. And a huge portion, or I guess, of that success is due to the fact that there's a frequency cap of about 45 days on these ads. So the audience that you're targeting with these conversational ad campaigns, they can't be bombarded with these by, a handful of your competitors all at the same time. So it's a huge competitive advantage if you're trying to target the right people in a way that, they may not be targeted right now. And then the last thing being the click to open rate benchmark. So we talked about InMails before, and I'm on InMail overload. There's a whole lot of garbage that I get sent, but I would say the conversation ads that I now have been receiving specifically over the last 30 to 45 days, some are really good. Some are actually complete copies of what we've put out there. So imitation is the best form of flattery, but it's a channel that's working, and we would definitely recommend that you guys take a look at this and see what it can do for your companies too.
One more point too on that before we play that video. The combination here of both of these actually is a strong combination. And so we, at the end of the conversation ad, use a lead gen form to keep them in the platform. But what's nice about it, and you'll see in the video, is we can carry them through awareness, consideration, and interest, and then pop a form all in the same experience versus like a standard static ad, which is just, it's in the feed, you either get them or you don't. And if you pop a lead gen form right there, it might feel a little bit more like, whoa, what am I doing? And so we found that the combination of both of those is really a sweet spot for us.
Perfect. So we're going to play a video real quick that we had submitted for LinkedIn's I Heart ABM event earlier this year.
Hey everybody, Jason Widup here, VP of Marketing at Metadata.io. I'm here to talk to you today about how I used LinkedIn conversation ads to drive a 500% increase in demo requests over the course of about a 2-month period. I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to jump right in. The biggest problem that I have as a marketer marketing to marketers is that I'm swimming in this sea of over 8,000 other products. And by the time I've found something that is interesting, it's become best practice, and it's already oversaturated. So I'm going to start with my first tip. Always try new advertising products because you'll often get breakout performance as an early adopter. All right, so what is a LinkedIn conversation ad? It's really the best of a couple worlds. First, it's LinkedIn sponsored InMail plus the combination of a conversational drift playbook equals a conversation ad. It's pretty easy to understand. How did I set up my conversation ad? Well, first, I wanted to focus on 2 things: who it's going to, and using more intelligence than just job title and company. And also, I wanted a compelling offer in there. So at the time I launched this was right around quarantine time. Hey, here's a $100 DoorDash gift card. I know your time is valuable in exchange for taking a demo with us. So tip number 2, always use intelligence from as many sources as possible to create your segment list so that your money is working a lot harder for you. Every dollar you spend is working much harder, not spread across too many accounts. Okay, so how did I actually set up my conversation ad? So the first thing, and one of the most important things, is who it's coming from. So it came from me. Make sure this comes from someone your prospects can relate to. Sorry, sales, this might not be you. Next, you only have 500 characters per message. So get right to it. Say who you are, what you do, get into the social proof, and then always be relatable and conversational. Tip number 3, I cannot stress the importance of social proof enough for startups. Spend some time winning brands your prospects will know and offer them discounts in exchange for use of their logo rights. All right, you've got them on the hook, you've got them interested. Now you want to further qualify them to make sure that you're only handing off leads to SDRs that they want to talk to. And also make it as frictionless as possible. Use a lead gen form with like maybe 4 fields that are pre-filled, just enough to get a hold of them. What if they're not interested? That's okay. just give them a little bit more information before they go. They're already there. And then give them a button they can click over to your website to learn more if they're interested. How does this perform? Well, for us, outside of all the demo requests that drove, everything else was great too. The open rate was 64%. So on average, you can't fake that. On average, I paid $1.10 to create a great awareness. And this is, compared to a normal social ad of $1 to $2 cost per click, it's a deeper engagement and probably a little bit more exciting because over 30% of the people that came and got a demo mentioned it during their demo. So let me recap this for you. Tip 1, try new advertising products early. 2, use intelligence from several sources to create your segment. And I cannot overestimate the importance of early social proof. Thanks and good luck.
So I saw some good questions come in about that too. We'll definitely address when we get to the end.
I think one that I'd like to address, and I know that the takeaways here are really just a summary of what was talked about in Jason's video, is point number 2. So using as much as you can from a public information perspective when building your target audiences and lists. One of the things that we do is we look at built with data. So what's in their tech stack, in addition to looking at any of the public ads that are listed on Facebook and LinkedIn for some of those target accounts. And you can begin to use that combination of information to build really targeted segments, and then also refine what your value proposition is for that segment. So in short, don't just use a target account list. Make sure that you've got a target account list combined with a couple other different data sources so that you have context when you're targeting these accounts and you're making sure that whatever you're offering to them is as relevant as possible. Alrighty, we don't have a designer, so I did this Photoshop myself. It's pretty horrendous, but I figured we'd include this as we're going to get into some of our predictions from the peanut gallery. Alrighty, so Jason, I'll kick this one off first. This is something that you and I are really passionate about. The first being the double funnel approach will become the norm. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the double funnel? And for those that aren't familiar with what a double funnel is, think of it as using 2 funnels to measure your marketing programs. One funnel is for your traditional demand generation, volume-based funnel. So just think larger quantities that fit your ICP. And then the second is the account-based funnel. So more in line with what you're doing from an ABM perspective. There are different metrics and programs and content required for both. And it's very difficult to try and measure everything using a single funnel.
Yeah, and that's when I first saw the visualization for this come out. Topo did it earlier this year, I think. It was just, spoke to me. It was like, that's exactly how I've been thinking about it, but I just haven't been able to put it to words or a visual. But the reality is, if you're only doing ABM, you're probably missing out on a decent amount of business because when the very starting point of ABM is who am I going to market to? And none of us are perfect. None of us are going to actually make that target account list the exact people that it should be. And so if you start from that as a given, then it's like, oh, well then, yeah, I am going to need to run some more maybe high volume stuff that's not going to probably convert at the highest rate as an ABM would. But I can do this maybe a little bit more inexpensively. I can find existing demand that's already out there that I might not see in my target account list. So I think, yeah, definitely. I think as more people start to realize that like, oh, this is actually kind of what we do, but we just haven't really had a way of talking about it. Or people realize like, oh, shoot, I've went all in on ABM. What am I missing out on? We'll start to see this become actually a bigger norm.
Number 2, so humor and empathy playing a much bigger role in marketing. So I think you've probably seen a few memes from the Metadata crew. You've seen some cameos too. In some ways, it's a workaround for not having a full-time designer, but also it's trying to just show that we're people marketing to people at the end of the day. And I think what we're also trying to do is take a lot of what's working in the B2C world and just replicate that in B2B. And I think the people that are doing the best marketing right now are the ones that are the most empathetic in understanding who I am, what I do, what my problems are, what keeps me up at night. We're not just personas at the end of the day. I think it takes a whole lot more dedication and focus to translate a persona into everyday marketing.
Yeah, and I've been a buyer. I've been on the other end of my marketing for a bigger part of my career than I've actually been at this end. And what we're trying to do at Metadata is we're trying to give experiences that I would have wanted, you know what I mean, when I was being sold to at these larger companies. And, you know, it's really, for me, it really comes down to the relationship. And when you have the relationship, it actually opens up the ability for more humor and more empathy and more authenticity. And so, you know, trying to get all those together is really our focus. You know, we really want to have genuine relationships with our prospects, whether or not they buy from us. We want to be helpful and we want to have some fun.
Exactly. And I think on the third point, we'll get to ungated content a little bit more in the survey slides, since that's something that it sounds like you all are excited about too. Product tours. So this is something that we've recently added to our own site. And again, in the whole spirit of doing marketing that I feel like I would respond personally well to, we're trying to do that. We're trying to give a glimpse of what's underneath the hood on our site, without having you know, needing to talk to an SDR or an AE for, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 initial discovery calls before you can actually see the product. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to determine fit right out of the gate. And if you still like what you see after you've taken that product tour and then you want to get in touch with us, you know, we're happy to have those conversations, but we also don't want to throw leads that aren't a good fit over to our sales team. If we could have weeded them out a little bit earlier based on how our product works and whether it meets the needs of the people that we're marketing to.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to have to convince people that they need my product. You know what I mean? Like maybe a little bit of just helping them see it clearly, but I don't want to have to like convince, you know, I want it to be incredibly clear that like, oh, either, yep, your product will be good for me, or no, it won't. And have that be just an experience that people can take on their own. And like the product tours, we got a funny story behind this. I don't know, we're hopefully not doing too bad on time. Oh yeah, a little bit like, but product tours. So we built one for our product, and we were testing it out, and my CEO came to me on a one-on-one. He's like, "Oh, I see you got the product tour live." I was like, "Oh no, it's just on the staging server." He's like, "No, it's live on the site." I was like, "Oh shit!" And in fact, it was live for over a week. I didn't even know. Luckily, it was in a good place. And actually, another quick data point on this: we did some analysis recently and saw that of the all visitors coming to our website, for those that see the product page now, or the product tour page, sorry, I don't know if they've engaged with it, but if they've been to the product tour page and assuming they've engaged with it, they actually convert to a meeting at about 2x that of every other site visitor. So, you know, I think it can actually be a benefit, and we're still playing around with it and trying to optimize it.
Continuing the whole transparency note, number 4 being pricing pages becoming more transparent than ever in 2021. I think any company that will show an initial sticker price and just kind of a ballpark of, hey, this is the starting point. I think those companies are positioning themselves really well because it arms prospective buyers with information that they need. That again, if their budget is not in the same stratosphere as, you know, the initial cost of your tool, that's the information that they need to know, so they're not wasting their time and not wasting your sales reps' time either.
I just saw a comment. Sorry, somebody commented, "We're using 7 funnels. Get on my level." I love that comment. That's hilarious. That's great. And I'm just going to skip through to MQLs. I'm not going to comment on pricing pages because we're a little bit behind on time. But so MQLs will make a serious comeback. What do we mean by this? What we don't mean that people are not using them, but what we mean is people are not using them right. And so if you're really honest with yourself and you look at your definition of an MQL, put yourself in the shoes of a salesperson. Would you actually want to try and sell that lead? You know, would you want to try and convert that to a deal? And so what we mean by this is we're going to have a comeback in terms of like, let's define an MQL like the way we would want to receive a lead if we were a salesperson. And so it doesn't mean that they saw 2 pages and visited the site 3 times in the last 2 weeks. You know, it's not, there's no real great algorithm, a behavioral algorithm that can really tell you that. Maybe there probably are some out, but let's get better about defining what really an MQL is. Let's partner with sales a lot more strongly. We see this in some of our customers. The sales and marketing alignment's not there, and it causes problems. It causes marketing problems. It really does.
Awesome. So what did you tell us? We ran a survey in the last probably 7 to 10 days or so. We got, I think, just over 100 responses from demand marketers and many of the people that are attending this webinar today. And what we wanted to see was, what are they thinking about their own priorities for the new year, new channels that they're going to try, new trends that they are expecting. And the good news is some of what we found kind of meshes with what we were believing as marketers ourselves. So I think in many ways that's reassuring. The first point being, you hope that ungated content comes a reality. So it will require you to change some of the metrics that you're reporting out on internally, and making sure that you get the right buy-in from your leadership team and whoever you have to report out on marketing's impact to. Because if you're removing all of the gates per se on your site, your lead volume is going to go down. So you need to be able to show progress and what you're doing is impacting things positively if you can't use leads at the end of the day. The second piece being, you want to make your marketing more personalized. As marketers, and Jason and I have tried this recently, we love when we get personalized outreach from other marketers and salespeople. So the more that you can tell that they have spent 15, 20 minutes plus trying to personalize their outreach and not just using some personalization token in their email, that goes a long way, and we're more receptive to that outreach. The third being, you plan to double down on LinkedIn and video content. So we'll talk about organic social more here in a bit. It seems to be a huge priority for most marketers next year, if they haven't already made it a priority in 2020. And then video content. So I think there are ways that you can be creative about how to come up with video content on a startup budget, like Jason and I are used to. Jason, I'll let you take the fourth one, because I feel too old for TikTok, and I'm not going to be doing that at Metadata.
You feel too old for TikTok? Oh, wow. Yeah, I had to actually have my 15-year-old explain it to me not that long ago. But what I think is funny is I've been seeing a lot of TikTok videos then that are just transported to other channels, which is kind of interesting. And so, yeah, so we might see it. I mean, I'll be interested to see. I'd love if any of y'all are doing TikTok campaigns right now and having some success. I'd love just reach out and let me know what you're doing. I'm just kind of interested. I don't think we'll do it, but I'm actually just curious what people are actually, B2B people are doing on TikTok.
We'll send the survey data in our follow-up too, so you will have access to this. We do want to get to the Q&A, but I think there's a couple of things worth calling out here. For me, it's the third column. So the number of people that want to send fewer non-hand raisers to sales. That's awesome. I think that bodes very well with using the right MQL definition with your team, not just scoring MQLs based on a lead score without any sort of intent or demo request, because we don't want to waste our sales reps' time, and they're also tired of handling garbage leads.
Yeah, and the one I like on this one that was interesting to me was the gifts in exchange for meetings. I kind of mentioned that earlier on as part of our conversation ad campaign as well. And I think, we tried it. We've been using it in conversation ads for 8 months now. And then we tried it. We're like, let's maybe try and get a bigger audience and do it in just a general sponsored content ad. And boy, we wasted a bunch of money because it didn't, well, not a bunch, but we wasted, can you really call it an experiment, a waste of money? Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. We spent a lot of money and got some learnings. And the learnings were that format didn't work as well as conversation ads. And so, but what I think is interesting is that, looks like some people are toeing the water. I'm 50-50 on it. If we were like a big name company with a ton of awareness, would I have to do it? I might not. But like right now, I'm one of the smallest fishes in a huge pond of huge fish. And, I really do need something that'll help me stick out and get my message in front of people. And also, if you can tie it to ROI and there's a positive ROI, then it's like, well, then you should keep doing it as long as you're not hurting somebody or hurting your brand. And so yeah, for us, it's been a hugely high ROI on conversation ads. And so using that gift in exchange for a meeting.
And one thing to add, there was a question about this before we jump into the next slide. So one of the things that we saw were people who may have kind of adjacent titles that make sense for our target audience, but aren't 100% in our target audience. And when they see, hey, Jason's going to feed me with a $100 DoorDash gift card, their eyes light up and they just want that DoorDash gift card. So one of the ways that we've tried to work around that is, we're happy to give that person the gift card as long as they're going to make an intro to the person that we ideally want to talk to at the end of the day, whether that's the decision maker or an influencer. So that's one of the ways that we've tried to work around that too. Content mediums, we'll glance through this somewhat quickly just to leave more time for Q&A. But again, the big findings are video and LinkedIn, and then podcasts in particular. So we've started our own podcast, Category Creators, which has been a learning experience. It's been the first podcast that I've ever been involved with. Jason, I don't know about you, but I think it's been an awesome way for us to get people interested just in category creation in general, and then have Metadata and Gil Alouche, our CEO, associated with that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is we went into it mostly just, we're like, well, hey, we're kind of stuck in this category thing, you know, that a lot of startups are stuck in, and we don't know much about it. You know, we want to know more about it. And so our intent with the podcast was to learn more about category creation from some of these like big name CEOs. But what's actually happened is it's just actually opened up some interesting networking opportunities for Gil. You know, he's getting to know more other CEOs. And, you know, is it helping our business? It probably is in some way, but this is one of those things where could you make a direct line from the podcast to a deal? Probably not. Is it happening? Probably. And so we'll keep doing it. And it's actually good for him too. He likes to do it. The only other thing I'll mention here is, you know, from a video standpoint, I think I'm starting to see, you know, low production video is fun and it's good. I think I'm starting to see more high production and more entertainment value in some B2B campaigns I really like. Like I'm thinking of like Gong recently with a commercial series that they're doing. Our buddy James over at CRM Next, I think they're doing like a funny spoof off of the Bachelor thing. So I love those, you know, and I might not always have a chance to see them or watch them, but like just seeing those in my feed and have it break up in a way, it's just, it's nice. And I hope to see that continue.
So which channels do you plan on testing out in 2021? I think for many people that aren't already focusing on organic social, I think what they're also trying to do is expand outside of the organic social work that they are doing themselves and trying to get other employees to also be as active as they are on organic social. I think very few companies right now have figured out how to do social well from their own corporate pages. You know, again, Gong comes to mind, Drip comes to mind, and that isn't by accident. There's a whole lot of work that goes into it. So until you can get to that point, I would suggest branching out and trying to get other executives at your company and other people on your revenue teams who want to be just a little bit more publicly facing and getting out there and trying to generate engagement and awareness for your company. And then another thing that I would mention, Slack communities. So I've been a part of a handful of these, some good, some bad. I think oftentimes what feels like is happening on those, it's just an announcement medium. So it's just things being broadcasted and there's very little two-way interaction. I think the communities that do that well, and it's something that we've kicked around ourselves, that will be a huge advantage for them in 2021 and beyond. So it's something that we're trying to figure out internally at Metadata too.
I'm interested in like the influencer marketing piece on here and to see what people actually do in B2B. You know, it's like at B2C, you slap Ryan Reynolds' name on a tequila bottle and like a shitty tequila bottle maybe. And like all of a sudden the value of it goes up by like 6 times, you know? And so it's just kind of an interesting take. And I'm really interested to see what we here in B2B marketing do with that. I've been thinking about it, you know, in certain ways, and, you know, in some ways we're trying to do it. You know, we're just not being very like, hey, we'll pay you this in exchange for this. We're just trying to like find people that could be influential and just try and get them to use the product, you know, and then hopefully they like it and then hopefully they'll talk about
it. So a few quick quotes. I won't try and read too many of these, but I think what you can take away from this slide is people really are invested in organic social for 2021. So whether it's trying to get their leadership team on board with this, whether it's trying to connect with their really target buyers and influencers at their accounts and not pitch slapping them, but just trying to make sure that the content that they're publishing on a daily or weekly basis is being seen by the people who may be buying their software at the end of the day. And I think the other thing is just trying to stay in front of people even when they're not working. I use LinkedIn quite a bit, and I may not interact with every single post that I read. In fact, I definitely don't. But I do remember a lot of those posts. And if there's an SDR that reaches out to me, or we're looking at some tool at Metadata that we think might be a good fit, I'll let those companies know. And we're surprised how often it comes up on some of our call recordings too, that people do see this, and it's difficult at times to measure the impact of it because you can't really quantify everything. But there's a lot of really good qualitative feedback that we're getting right now, and hopefully you're not tired of us yet. And then what's one trend you expect to dominate B2B marketing in 2021? This one came up a few times. It sounds crazy to say, but I believe it. Just back to basics. I think we were so fascinated for so long with shiny automations and pieces of technology and the Salesforce playbook for predictable revenue that in some ways we've kind of lost like what good marketing is. There's a whole lot of podcasts out there, video content, courses, whatever it may be. And my hope is that we see people really trying to nail down not just their target audience, but value proposition, messaging, positioning, and how to reach those audiences instead of just lighting up email campaigns and having them download a gated ebook and routing them to an SDR cadence if they're not going to convert to pipeline and revenue.
Yeah, I love that one too, because it's kind of the story of my career almost. Like working at these big companies, even attribution models is a great example of this. It's like working hard to try and build these like super complicated, attribution, multi-touch attribution models with fractional credit and all this stuff. And then not getting the lift expected from all the work put into creating a model and supporting a model like that. And then coming back to like, well, you know what? I'm just going to look at first touch and last touch, and then I'm just going to make a decision between those. You know what I mean? I'm going to look at first touch, last touch. I'm going to inform myself who's opening the door, who's closing the door, and then I'm going to, do some things in between. And so I like that back to basics.
Awesome. So we've got about 8 minutes left. There's been a bunch of questions that have come through, so I want to make sure that we've got some time to answer these. And
I'm glad they came through because I just realized we never did our seed questions.
Yeah. Well, I had some.
Go ahead. I'm glad. Oh, you had some.
One of the two of us prepared for this, so I had a couple as well. But yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I think the one thing that I really want to talk through, just because this is something that we had to work through too at Metadata, is if you're running any sort of gift promo and seeing that the conversion to opportunity and closed won revenue isn't as high as you'd like, what are some things that you can do to try and improve that conversion rate and just the number of opportunities that you're generating?
So I missed the first part of that one. Was this around conversation ads or just general?
Just any sort of campaign that offers a gift, because what often happens is people are coming to you because they want the gift and they don't have an immediate need. So anything that you could shed, Jason, as to how to help people overcome that?
The way that we think about it here is that there will be some of that. Now, if I can get them still on a demo now, and they're the right buyer. So if I'm pretty clear that the right buyer and I can get them on a meeting now, I'm at least doing the awareness thing. I'm giving them more awareness. I'm giving them insight into my product that they wouldn't have probably just by looking at the website and going to G2, et cetera. And so it's a little bit of greasing the skids for a later deal. And so, because sometimes when you're running these campaigns, you might not have intent, for example, baked into your audience, or you don't really know, are these people in market for this or not? And so, kind of flexing that way, I think can help. But thinking of it and looking at it, probably don't measure it exactly the same way as other demand activities, or have other ways of measuring. Like, okay, for example, for us, when we get a meeting through a DoorDash campaign, the chances of that turning into a meeting is about 75%. Whereas if we just had somebody on the website saying, booking a demo, they literally booked it themselves. You know what I mean? And so that's closer to 90%, 90 to 100%. And so, there's just going to be some different conversion rates that you want to bake in. But ultimately, again, what you're trying to do is you want to make sure that that very end number is still ROI positive.
Another question that we got was, what is the most important part of ABM? And I think we can answer that in a couple different ways, but I think one of the thoughts that I have is actually being able to measure what you're doing and showing real business results. We actually saw there was a poll recently from it was a CM, actually CEO of another ABM software company. It was a poll that asked what is how should demand generation fit into your marketing efforts next year? And overwhelmingly, one of the most popular answers was, you should be doing ABM, but you should be doing more demand gen to make sure that you strike the right balance between the two. So it's important. There are very few companies out there that can only do account-based marketing. Jason mentioned some of our customers, they may have 8 to 10 target accounts, and they have significantly larger budgets than we can ever dream of. But most of us don't live in that reality. So it's important to work on your ABM in tandem with what you're doing from a demand generation perspective.
Nice. I'm going to answer a quick tactical question. Somebody asked, what tool did you use to create your product tour? We used Tourial. So it's like tour and tutorial. Tourial. Great startup, really easy to use. It's a startup. So there's, a couple bugs, but what's nice about it, it's a tiny team. So like if I find a bug, I literally just email their CEO and it's fixed in the next daily release or something. So it's a great little tool. And like I said, we're seeing a lot of great engagement from it.
Another question that came in, one of your trends for 2021 is MarTech consolidation. Can you elaborate on that one? What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
Actually, it's a concern especially at larger organizations. So when I was at Workfront before here, my CMO at the time just said, I think we have too much MarTech. And I've heard that at several companies that I've worked at. The top boss who doesn't maybe fully understand what we're doing in operations and with technology says, whoa, look at that marketing technology expenditure. And so we're left with basically saying going through each tool that we have. I think I had 80 tools at Workfront or something like that. And so when you get to that point, there are probably going to be tools in there that have duplicative capability, right? And so you've got I own Marketo. We use these slices of Marketo, but there's these other 8 we don't use. I just bought another tool that does one of those 8. So the consolidation would be, okay, I'm going to get rid of this tool and I'm going to basically consolidate that functionality over to Marketo. And so there's a lot of that going on. That plus a lot of acquisitions that are happening too. So these bigger companies acquiring smaller companies, or a demand base and engagement. Sorry, acquisition. So those kinds of things will also affect it.
Yeah, and I think also just trying to get more out of the existing tools that you have instead of constantly looking at new tools and thinking that you need new tools to accomplish those things. Yep. And just making sure that, with the limited budget that you do have, for as long as COVID is unfortunately a thing, the likelihood that you'll have additional budget to purchase more tools, it's probably not a realistic reality, but making sure that you can get as much as you possibly can out of what you currently have in your tech stack and make those core tools work more effectively.
Yep.
Another one, this one's a funny one. Are ebooks still a thing? What data do you have on that? I think unfortunately ebooks still are a thing. And I say unfortunately because I can't remember the last time that I've downloaded a really good ebook. And I get a little nervous when I download ebooks because I know as soon as I enter in my contact information, what's going to happen in the next few days and weeks from an automated sequence to light me up. So I think there's still a thing. I think what I've seen work better is longer form content. Again, Drift does this really well, where it's a very tactical, it's like a how-to guide of a specific use case, and using that as a way to explain the value of what their product does without pushing that product onto you. So when they realize that whenever you have the need for a conversational marketing platform or whatever they're calling themselves these days, you'll then think of them because they've gone the extra mile to help you long before you are ready to purchase anything from them.
Yeah, and I think just judging by our own data, right? So 4 of the 6 of those low CPL ads were all ebooks, basically. So I think, alive and well, and still being used. And in fact, we're probably going to turn a lot of our content right here into an ebook or whatever we want to call it.
But not getting it.
Probably give it out to you for free.
Yeah.
But it will be still an ebook. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've got a few more questions and probably not enough time to go through them all. I think what we'll do is we'll make a commitment to everyone that's asked a question to make sure that these are logged, and we'll get an answer to you in the recap that follows. We're going to be doing follow-up a little bit differently. Jason and I are making a promise. You are not going to be lit up by any SDRs or automated sequences, but what we're going to try and do is provide you with more content from this presentation, some of the raw data in case you're interested in looking into it. And hopefully this serves as some inspiration next year. So your marketing does not have to suck in 2021, like we named this webinar. So I think people are starting to drop off now, but we definitely appreciate. There was I think probably 150 plus people that came onto the webinar today. So glad everybody could make it. Sorry for a few of the Zoom difficulties, but I think it's pretty fitting for 2020.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, Mark, for getting us all together.
Thanks, everybody.